1936 Olympics in Berlin, and this is one of the most outstanding of all athletic events as far as I'm concerned. And so I'm going to tell you first how I even first became aware of it. My father was a basketball player in college, and his coach was later the coach of the 1936 Olympics basketball team. And so this was the first year that Olympics was used as a Olympic sport. So that's how I first became aware of it. And then Kay and I had a trip scheduled to Berlin, and I thought, well, I'll just go out, a day or two early to Berlin and, ride out the stadium, see if I could get in and take some photographs and do whatever else I could do. So I took the train out to the stadium, and this. So the front of the stadium is to the left there, and so I got off the train and went up to the front of the stadium, the main entrance, and there are two uniformed guards there, and I said, well, can I just go in the stadium for a minute and take a few pictures? The answer was no, because of security reasons. But they showed me a way I could get around the Olympic complex and go into the bell tower and get pictures into the stadium. So that's what I did. And I got up in the bell tower, took my pictures, and then looking off to the left between a patch of trees, I could see a red surface. And that, to me, meant that's the red clay tennis court where the basketball games were played in the 1936 Olympics. So I said, oh, I really want to get in there and see that Olympic basketball court in the outdoors. So I went back down and went around to another gate, and again two young uniformed officers. And so I went around to the third gate, and there was a middle-aged man guarding that gate. And so I just had a conversation with him about the Olympics. And so I think maybe he got tired of me or something. So he said, "Kommen Sie rein, ich habe Sie nicht gesehen." So me and Cindy, that's come in, I didn't see you. So I did walk in, and I looked at some of the venues like the swimming competition area and the gymnastics area. And then I got to the red clay tennis court and looked around very carefully and started scraping the clay so I could get a sample to take home with me. And I also took pictures around the red clay tennis court and could identify that as the actual court where the championship game was played. And so then I realized that it was quite late, and I hadn't noticed the passage of time. So no cell phone, no at least international plan where I could talk to Kay, but that I really got to get out of here. And so I couldn't go back to the gate where the middle-aged man was. I said, I have to go toward the gate where the train is. And so I went up to that gate, and again, two young uniformed guards, and that was really a terrifying moment. But finally, two panel trucks pulled up to the gate, and one guard went to one truck, and one guard went to the other truck to talk to the drivers. So I was able to get out on the other side of the trucks. So then I made it back, and that was my experience with the stadium itself. And now we need to talk about, first the athletes that participated in the 1936 Olympic Games. Of course, this is the one athlete that is best known for 1936 Olympics. And that is, of course, Jesse Owens. And Jesse and his family were sharecroppers near Oakville, Alabama. And I think probably early 1920s or something, they moved to Cleveland, Ohio, where his father got a job. And so Jesse went through high school, outstanding athlete, and then was admitted to Ohio State University, where he excelled in track. And actually, in his senior year, 1935, he set one of the most amazing Olympic world records in a very short time, in 1 hour. So he first tied the records in the 3 dashes in the long jump. That was in the standard American measures, and then so he was obviously candidate for the 1936 Olympics, and so he went to the Olympics, and this is important to note, and very few people, I suppose, are aware of this, but Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals, which unprecedented, and then Phelps, the swimmer, did it later, I don't know, the 80s or whenever it was, and so you can see on the next slide, Jesse's first 2 events. So here's the 100-meter sprint, and here's the 200-meter, and he ran those sprints and won them in typical Jesse Owens style, where he just, really did exceedingly well in the 100-meter race, set another world record. And on the second race, he won and beating the Olympic record, and the silver medalist that finished second in the race also broke the Olympic record. And what's interesting is that the athlete who took second, won the silver medal, was from Cairo, Georgia. Now I know that wait a minute. Somebody told me that it's not actually Cairo, Georgia, it's
Cairo.
One of you who told me that. So this was Mac Robinson, who was the older brother of Jackie Robinson, both of whom came from Cairo, Georgia. And so Mac Robinson, did an outstanding job, and just in those days they did have photo finishes, and so Owens won, but it's still great that Mac Robinson came in. It's such a close second in a photo finish. So now those 2 gold medals were the type you'd expect from Jesse Owens. And then let's take note of what happened in the next 2 events where Jesse Owens participated. The next event was the long jump, and I told Kay, this is a picture of Jesse Owens flying, because look how far he is above the ground, but he already had the world record that he established when he was a senior in college at the Big Ten track meet. And so, he was a natural to win. So the other champion long jumper was Lutz Long, who is a German long jumper and the champion of Europe, and his distances were just barely short of Jesse's. So anyway, Jesse was doing his long jumps for the qualifications, not for the championship of the event. And he was really having a very off day. And in fact, he was down to his last jump in order to qualify for the actual competition, the fight to win the medals. And so down to his last jump, and obviously Jesse was despondent, the world record holder who couldn't make the cut for the championship round. And he was totally despondent and was, looking very sad, down on one knee before his last jump. And then here's again the German, the European champion broad jumper came over to him in the middle of the stadium. And you can see the stadium there, part of the stadium with 110,000 people there. So 110,000 people see Lutz Long walking over to Jesse Owens and encouraging him and consoling him, and also gave him a couple of minor tips that he could improve his jump. So on his last qualifying jump, Jesse Owens was able to make it and get into the final round. So, so here's a case of a German athlete those two just connected in a magical way from that moment. And so Jesse and Lutz became lifelong friends. In fact, here's this iconic photo that I've seen, multiple times. That's on one of these books I have over here. So again, they're in the infield grass at the stadium and having a conversation. Lutz could speak English, not well, but he spoke it. And so then, Jesse went back to the States, and Lutz got his law degree and became a lawyer in Tumblr. And Jesse and Lutz did correspond, but then in 1942, Lutz had to go into the army and was immediately sent to Sicily, where the Germans were trying to stop the Allies from North Africa getting into Sicily and then up the Italian peninsula. So Lutz was in the army unit on the beach, and it was fierce fighting there. And Lutz thought he was going to die. So what he did was, in the middle of this Allied invasion of Sicily, and all the noise and horror of war, he wrote a letter to Jesse, and he wrote it in his second language, English. And so it doesn't sound like a great letter to those who are entirely fluent in English, but I'm trying to read it here. That's not very clear up there. He says, I am here, Jesse, where it seems there is only the dry sand and the wet blood. I do not fear much for myself, my friend Jesse. I fear for my woman who is home and my young son Carl, who has never really known his father. My heart tells me, if I be honest with you, that this is the last letter I shall ever write. If it is so, I ask you something. It is something so very important to me. It is you go to Germany when this war is done. Someday find my son Carl and tell him about his father. Tell him, Jesse, what times were like when we were not separated by war. I am saying, tell him how things can be between men on this earth. If you do this something for me, the thing I need the most to know will be done. I do something for you now. I tell you something I know you want to hear, and it is true. That hour in Berlin, when I first spoke to you, when you had your knee on the ground, I knew you were in prayer. Then I not know how I know, now I do. I know it is never by chance we come together. I come to you that hour in 1936 for a purpose more than the Olympiade. And you, I believe, will read this letter, while it should not be possible to reach you ever for purpose more even than our friendship. I believe that this shall come about because I think now that God will make it come about. That this is what I have to tell you, Jesse. I think I might believe in God, and I pray to him that, even while it should not be possible for this to reach you ever, these words I write will somehow be read by you. So that's the Lutz Long's letter to Jesse, shortly before his death. And the letter was found on him. Actually, members of the German Red Cross went to Sicily and found his body and the letter on his body. So this is what Lutz felt about their relationship, and Jesse had the same feeling. In fact, it's really remarkable how two men could meet like that in that situation and form such a really incredible relationship. So that's, I'm talking about the two medals. The first two were won in the usual Jesse Owens fashion, but in this one, had not Lutz Long and Jesse had this really strong connection, he would not have won his third gold medal. And so then next, let's go on to the fourth medal, which was the 400 meter relay. So this is what happened. the black members of the U.S. Olympic team really took track and field. And so that dispelled the Aryan myth thing, Hitler. And so then, getting down to this one of the last events, the coach of the American Olympic team came to Jesse and said, now this is a team meeting, so the coach told Jesse, I want you to run in the 400 meter relay. And Jesse said, look, I don't feel good. I don't want to run. I want Glickman and Stoller to be in this race. And so there's Marty Glickman, Jewish sprinter, and he was later a well-known sports announcer in New York City. And there's Sam Stoller, who also had a great career after the Olympics. And so Jesse says, I don't want to betray Sam and Marty. And so finally the coach was fed up with this, and he stood up and pointed to Jesse and said, you will do as you're told. So that's why Jesse Owens was in that relay race, that he was on the winning team. So that's 4 of his gold medals, 2 of which were not one of the usual style. And so Jesse was the hero. I mean, he was sensational. And he went back to the United States, and he had a ticker tape parade in lower Manhattan, and the crowd was wild about him. It filled the streets on both sides. And then there was a special reception to be held for Jesse in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. And, you know, the people from the city arrived and wherever they were from. And so Jesse went up to the front door of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel and said, look, they're having this reception for me. I need to get into the hotel. I said, well, sir, you cannot enter through the front door of the Waldorf Astoria. So they showed him around to the back of the hotel and took him to the level of the ballroom in a freight elevator, the one who was having the reception. And so Jesse got out there. Now, he's a 22-year-old black man, New York City. I don't know if there are any other black people there or not. But anyway, Jesse was just kind of regarded as a curiosity. Because what can, you know, a rich New Yorker, Midtown Manhattan guy say to a 20-year-old black guy from Alabama? So he was just regarded as somebody that we're kind of interested in. But so anyway, that is what happened to Jesse Owens. And the next athlete is one that is completely unrecognized in today's sports history. And this was a guy named Glenn Morris, who was born in Simla, Colorado, a small, dusty town in the plains of Colorado. And his family were farmers, you know, pinto beans and other things. And so, and in Dust Bowl conditions too. So Glenn was admitted to Colorado State University, where he obviously excelled in track and was All-American football and also basketball. So he wanted to really get far beyond his humble beginnings. And one person who helped him was his college sweetheart. And that's Charlotte Edwards. And you can form your own impression of her by this picture. And that's the type of young woman she was. And so Charlotte and Glenn had this shared dream of, you know, achieving something far beyond their humble beginnings. And so Charlotte was a home ec major, and she said, I'm going to manage your diet. And then she also helped me on the training field as well. She would time his sprints or do anything else that she needed to do. So they were, you know, quite happy as college sweethearts. And then in contrast to Charlotte, and this is very important in the Olympics, because this is somebody who is entirely opposite from Charlotte. And this is Leni Riefenstahl, who was very famous in Germany because she was an actress Then she was a movie director and producer, and her great skill was that of cinematography, and she developed a lot of the newer cinematographic methods of capturing events, starting with the 1935 Nuremberg rally. So Hitler commissioned her as the person to make the documentary feature-length movie of the Olympics, which was titled Olympiade. So this is really tragic, I think, for Glenn. It totally derailed his life. And so, just like the immediate connection between Jesse Owens and Lutz Long, when the hard-driven, highly energetic Glenn Morris first met eyes with Lena Riefenstahl, who was the same type person, it wasn't love at first sight, it was passion at first sight. And the stories about them and their on-fire relationship, indicated what happened to Glenn. And then, of course, he had to come back to the States, and he left her in Germany. And they corresponded after that. And so, again, here is a picture of Laney and Glenn, in the Olympic Stadium, and somebody took a picture of them. So that was a remarkable and a very unfortunate thing to happen to Glenn Morris, and affected him for the rest of his life. So then the history continues of the Olympic characters, and here is one that is very interesting, but did not actually compete in the Olympics. And so this is Eleanor Holm. Okay, that's Eleanor. And so Eleanor was the most outstanding swimmer as a young woman ever. In fact, at age 15, she participated in the 1928 Olympics. So here is your granddaughter, probably a freshman or sophomore in high school, going to the Olympics to swim. And so she did not win a medal then, but after that time, she never lost a race in which she participated. She was a phenomenon. And she was also a party girl, and that became a problem later. So anyway, she was so remarkable that she actually made here's this young woman, that she was a swimmer, and she makes the cover of Time magazine. So I think that's extraordinary for somebody at that time. And so, I showed you that they made Tarzan and Jane in the movie, and here was Glenn Morris's only Tarzan movie. So Glenn Morris in Tarzan's Revenge, and that was the end of his movie career. It was also the end of hers. And I actually got a tape of that. It is horrible. And so this is a picture of Glenn in his later years. And so he had some terrible times after that, because he could no longer make a living as a movie actor. So he went to the Detroit Lions. They signed him to play. And in the first game, he had a career-ending injury, and then he divorced Charlotte, who he had married a year after he came back from Berlin. And so he was in terrible shape then, and he decided to volunteer for the war, for the Second World War, and was sent to the Pacific, where he was a gallant soldier, won a couple of Bronze Stars and maybe a couple other medals as well. But the thing he suffered then was severe post-traumatic stress disorder, which pretty much, finished him. And then so he came back to the States, and he couldn't really do much of anything, but he tried working as a construction worker, and finally he was a parking lot attendant, and then he was totally not functional, so he was given a place in one of the Veterans Administration domiciliaries, they call them, where they just take in people who are completely disabled, homeless, and in terrible shape. And so he went into that facility at age 51, the greatest athlete in the world in 1936, and at 51, he's pretty much finished. So he goes into domiciliary care, and at age 61, he dies. So that was the story of Lynn Morris, humble beginnings, fast rise to fame, reached his height, and then thought he could carry it on in some other way, but, those failed: football. And then and I forgot to mention, he was also a sportscaster for the first time, and he couldn't do that. So he was a broken man, and it's just amazing how somebody could work so hard, get so high, and then fall to such a deep level after that. So anyway, that's a brief summary of a couple of characters in the Olympics. But one of the great things about the 36 Olympics is that it's what I would think of as the first of the modern Olympics. And here's this. So you might not imagine what that is, but that is a television camera. And so 88 years ago, this was the first event to ever be televised. And it was a broadcast television. They would broadcast the signal to various venues close to the stadium, and it's estimated that 100,000 people saw parts of the games on quote, television. And another things the Germans innovated was the torch run from the archaeological site of Olympia. So here is a column in which the fire burns, and the runner lights the baton, and they carry it in relays from Olympia to there's the runner going, and so they're carrying it about 1,500 miles between Olympia and Berlin. And so that was a first also. And another first, and never again obviously, was they had the Hindenburg dirigible fly over the stadium at a very low altitude. And this thing is unimaginably large. It's 800 feet long. That's about 2 3/4 football fields, and correspondingly wide. So it's a giant ship. So what the Germans did is they brought the Hindenburg over the Olympic Stadium at a very low altitude, and it blocked out the sun from a large part of the stadium as it was flying over. And you can almost think that this portended what is going to happen in just exactly 3 years from the time of the Olympics. That's the start of World War II, the cataclysm of the century, and probably for all time. So that's what I want to tell you this morning about the 36 Olympics, some of the interesting athletes, and some of the technology and things that happened in the modern era. So anyway, that's what I have to tell you this morning. So I see a question.
Yes, you forgot the most interesting part about their wedding, that he went back.
Oh, actually, she's my coach. And I did forget to tell you something. In fact, it's very important. And so that's why you should not try to do it without any notes. But anyway, after Jesse Owens received the letter from, thank you again, after Jesse Owens received the letter from Lutz Long asking that he return to Germany and talk to Carl, as was described in the letter, Jesse Owens did go back to Germany in 1951, when Carl was 10 years old, and I have a picture in the book over there about Carl and Jesse. And so he went back, and through an interpreter, he told Carl, that's his son, about his father. And then, remarkably, I don't know how many years later it was, but Carl was getting married, and so Jesse Owens came back to Germany again to be the best man at his wedding. So that's a pretty remarkable story.
Very nice.
Thank you, Kate.
Well, that was the romance.
Okay. All right. So anyway, I saw the hand raised back there. I said, why would she have a question? But she had a suggestion. So anybody else have any questions? Okay. All right, well, if you think anything afterward, please let me know. And I have a couple books up here. One is just a general book on the Olympics, and the other one is from, just a minute, the other one is from Carl Long, Lutz's son, and he has his own personal archive I don't think you'll see anywhere else. And he has some photos that are kind of interest to me, and they weren't quite crisp enough to project on the screen, so you can look at those if you want to. And so, Johnny had a question.
Where in Alabama was Jesse Owens from?
Okay, from Oakville. Does anybody know where Oakville, Alabama is? I never looked. You know? So sharecropper family goes north during the Great Migration, and Jesse excels in Ohio.
What was Jesse Owens' career like after the Olympics? Apparently he could afford to fly to Germany, that's good.
Okay, well, actually, right after the Olympics, he made money by racing horses and cars or whatever. But then he actually came along remarkably well and established a business of his own in, of all things, public relations. So he was a tremendous success considering the disadvantages he had in this country, being a black man and trying to start a business. So he was successful in that.
Did he marry and did he have children?
Oh yeah, Jesse married Minnie, whom he met in Cleveland, and they had 3 daughters. The first of whom was born when he was in college. Okay, Barbara.
Does anyone know if that church? The hotel. Did the hotel ever change its policies?
You mean the Waldorf Astoria?
Yeah.
Yes.
When did they change
I
their policies?
wish I knew. I wish I knew. So I have no idea about it. When the Waldorf Astoria changed their policy and allowed black people to walk through the front door.
As a New Yorker, I'm very disturbed by that.
Right. Well, that was 1936. I mean, that's 88 years ago. So things have changed a lot. I mean, so another question or suggestion?
FDR was not invited to the White House because
Oh, I wish I could remember all this stuff without looking at notes. But anyway, Jesse Owens was not admitted to the Waldorf Astoria through the front door. And of course, when you have an Olympic team, the president always invites the team to the White House. And so the team is invited to the White House, but not the black athletes. This is FDR in 1936. Again, 88 years ago, and that's just the way things were. The black members were not invited to the White House visit. So, anything else? Okay. All right, well, thank you.